My name is Claire, I am 35 years old, and until a year ago, I thought my life was stable, maybe not perfect, but at least secure. I had been married for nearly 10 years to a man named Marcus, a calm and intelligent person who had always seemed to be my anchor when the storms of life came too close. And then there was Hannah, my best friend since college, the one person I trusted outside my marriage more than anyone. Together, the three of us had shared dinners, birthdays, and countless nights of laughter, like we were a little family within a family. I never imagined that the two people I trusted most could shatter me in ways I am still learning how to describe. It started with small things. Marcus became a little more distant, a little less present in our conversations. He would get lost in thought while sitting on the couch, staring at the television but not really watching. At first, I thought it was work stress. He had recently been promoted to a managerial role, and I knew the responsibility was weighing on him. Hannah, always the supportive friend, told me not to worry. She would smile knowingly and say, "Men go through phases, Claire. Don't read too much into it." And I believed her, because why wouldn't I? She had been there through everything. Through my father's death, through my miscarriage, through the nights when Marcus and I fought and I needed someone to remind me I wasn't losing everything. Hannah was my safe space. One Friday evening, she came over with a bottle of wine. Marcus was home late, so she and I sat in the kitchen talking about old times. She laughed about how we used to sneak into concerts in our 20s and how Marcus was the responsible one who kept us from getting arrested. I remember saying, "I don't know what I'd do without either of you." And she just gave me this long look, her eyes shimmering, as if she knew something I didn't. Looking back, maybe she did. The first real crack appeared one night when Marcus came home later than usual. He smelled faintly of perfume, one I recognized instantly. Hannah's. I laughed it off nervously and said, "Were you hanging out with Hannah without me?" He froze, just for a second, then forced a smile and said she had dropped by his office to bring him lunch earlier. At the time, I pushed the thought away. It seemed ridiculous to even suspect anything. These were my people. They would never betray me. But then the late nights became more frequent. Hannah started canceling our coffee dates with vague excuses. Too much work. Not feeling well. Family thing came up. At the same time, she and Marcus seemed oddly synchronized, making the same offhand jokes, sharing glances that I told myself I was imagining. One night, we were all at a small gathering hosted by another friend, and I caught Marcus and Hannah whispering in the corner, their heads too close, her hand brushing his arm as she laughed softly. My stomach twisted, but when I confronted her later, she rolled her eyes. "Claire, don't be paranoid. You know I love you. Marcus is like a brother to me." The real truth revealed itself in the ugliest way. I had been restless one evening. Marcus out again, claiming he had a work dinner. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. I drove to Hannah's place, planning to surprise her, maybe drag her out for a late-night dessert the way we used to. Her apartment lights were dimmed, but her car was there. I knocked. No answer. My heart was pounding as I reached for the spare key she had given me years ago, the one she said I could always use because I was like family. I stepped inside quietly, and the moment I heard muffled laughter, my stomach dropped. I knew before I even opened the bedroom door. There they were, Marcus and Hannah, tangled in sheets, his arm around her like he used to hold me. My breath caught in my throat, and I must have made a sound because they both turned. Hannah's eyes widened, then narrowed almost instantly, as if she had been preparing for this. Marcus stammered something, scrambling for words that wouldn't come. But Hannah had the audacity to smirk, to cover herself with the sheet and say, "Claire, maybe if you had been more present for him, he wouldn't have come to me." It felt like someone had ripped open my chest. My knees almost buckled, and all I could manage was, "How could you?" Marcus tried to reach for me, but I stepped back like his touch was poison. Hannah kept talking, calmly, cruelly, telling me that marriages fall apart because women neglect their husbands, that she had simply been there to give him what I wouldn't. Every word was like acid burning through me. I had always thought betrayal would feel like rage, but in that moment, it felt more like drowning, Like the air had been sucked out of the room, and I couldn't breathe. I walked out. I don't even remember the drive home. Only that my hands shook so badly, I had to pull over at one point. By the time I got home, my whole world had cracked open. 10 years of marriage. 15 years of friendship. Gone in a single night, destroyed by the two people I loved most. I sat on the living room floor until morning, replaying Hannah's words over and over. It's your fault. And the worst part? A small, broken piece of me almost believed her. That night was the end of one version of my life, and the beginning of another. I didn't know it then, but the days ahead would push me into places I never thought I'd survive. The morning after discovering Marcus and Hannah together was one of the loneliest mornings of my life. I hadn't slept at all. I sat on the couch in the living room, the curtains still drawn, my hands wrapped around a cold cup of coffee I never drank. My body felt heavy, my head pounding with every thought I tried to silence. The silence in the house was unbearable, yet at the same time, I was terrified to hear the sound of Marcus's key in the lock. Around 8 o'clock, he finally came home. He looked disheveled, his hair messy, his shirt untucked, his eyes bloodshot. He froze when he saw me, sitting there like a ghost. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then he muttered, "Claire, please, I can explain." Explain? How could he possibly explain the image burned into my memory? I lifted my eyes to him and whispered, "Do not insult me by pretending there's an explanation." He stepped closer, his hands out like he wanted to touch me, to calm me down, but I stood up so fast the mug in my hand slipped and shattered against the hardwood floor. The sharp sound cut through the tension, but I didn't flinch. "Stay away from me," I said, my voice shaking but firm. He begged. He actually begged. "It just happened, Claire. It wasn't planned. I didn't mean for it to go this far." He was crying, real tears streaming down his face. And for a second, the part of me that still loved him wanted to believe him. But then I remembered Hannah's smirk, her words cutting through me. If you had been more present, he wouldn't have come to me. The memory fueled my anger, and I shouted, "You didn't just happen to fall into bed with my best friend. Don't stand there and pretend this was an accident." He tried to tell me it was a mistake, that he loved me, that he had been weak. But I saw the truth in his eyes. He wasn't just sorry, he was scared. Scared of what would happen now that the secret was out. The days that followed were a blur. I refused to talk to him beyond what was necessary. I moved into the guest room and told him not to touch me. Hannah tried to call me, dozens of times, leaving long voicemails that swung between fake apologies and manipulative justifications. One of them still rings in my ears. "Claire, you have to understand. Marcus needed me. You've been so distant. I only wanted to protect your marriage." Protect my marriage? By destroying it? Her logic was twisted, and yet, hearing it in her calm, convincing tone, I started to doubt myself again. Friends began to notice. My coworker, Jenna, asked me one day at lunch why I looked so drained, and I almost broke down in tears. I hadn't told anyone yet, because the shame felt too heavy. How do you tell people that the two people you trusted most betrayed you in the cruelest way possible? That the best friend you bragged about for years had stabbed you in the back? But the truth had to come out. One evening, I called my brother, Andrew, and told him everything. He was silent for a long time, then said, "Claire, pack his things and throw him out. And as for Hannah, cut her out of your life. Both of them don't deserve another second of your tears." Easier said than done. My marriage wasn't just a relationship, it was my home, my stability, my history. Throwing Marcus out felt like tearing away a piece of myself. But every time I saw him, I saw her too, and the betrayal festered like an open wound. One night, Marcus sat across from me at the kitchen table, his hands trembling. "I ended it with her," he said. "It's over, Claire. I want to fix this. I'll do anything." He promised therapy, swore he'd never see her again, begged me to forgive him. And there I was, sitting in silence, my heart torn between the love I once felt and the disgust that consumed me. Could I ever forgive him? Wouldn't forgiving him mean betraying myself? But the worst was still Hannah. She didn't back down. When she realized I wasn't answering her calls, she showed up at my work, waiting outside my office building. I walked out to see her leaning against her car, arms crossed, eyes full of false pity. "Claire," she said softly, "you can't ignore me forever. I'm your friend. I was only trying to help." That was it. I lost it. I stormed up to her, my voice louder than I ever thought it could be. "Help? You call destroying my marriage help? You call climbing into bed with my husband friendship?" People turned their heads, but I didn't care. My whole body shook as I shouted, "You don't get to twist this around on me. You don't get to blame me for what you chose to do." She didn't even flinch. She just gave me that same maddening smirk and said, "If you can't keep your husband happy, don't blame me for stepping in." I slapped her. I didn't even think, I just reacted. My palm stung instantly, and she gasped, touching her cheek with wide eyes. But instead of anger, she looked at me almost with pity, as though I had proven her point. Then she climbed into her car and drove away, leaving me trembling in the cold night air. That was the moment I knew I couldn't keep trying to salvage what was already dead. Marcus's betrayal was one thing, but Hannah's audacity, her ability to twist the knife deeper and deeper, showed me that some wounds never heal. My marriage was already in ruins. My friendship had been burned to ashes. The hardest part was accepting that the life I had built, the one I had been so proud of, was gone. And yet, deep inside, a small voice whispered, "Maybe this is the chance to build something new." The night I slapped Hannah outside my office, something shifted inside me. Until then, I had been paralyzed between disbelief and anger, unable to make a decision about Marcus, about my marriage, about my life. But as her car pulled away, leaving me standing there with my heart pounding and my hand still tingling, I realized I couldn't keep living in limbo. If I stayed frozen, they would win, both of them. I had to reclaim my life, even if that meant tearing it apart first. When I got home that night, Marcus was waiting in the kitchen, hunched over the table with his head in his hands. The moment he saw me, he stood, desperate. "Claire, please talk to me. We can't keep living like this." His voice was hoarse, his eyes red from crying. He looked like a broken man, and for a flicker of a second, I felt pity. But pity isn't love, and it isn't trust. I crossed my arms and said firmly, "Marcus, this house is not a home anymore. Not for me. Not with you here." He panicked. "Are you saying you want a divorce?" The word hit me like a stone. Divorce. A word I never thought would touch my marriage. We had stood in front of family and friends, promised forever. I had worn the white dress, spoken vows with trembling lips, believed that love would conquer anything. And now here we were, standing on the ruins of those promises. My throat tightened, but I forced myself to nod. "Yes, that's exactly what I'm saying." The days that followed were some of the hardest I've ever endured. Marcus begged, pleaded, tried to bargain. He promised therapy again, promised to cut Hannah completely out of his life, promised to be a better man. But those promises meant nothing now. I had given him trust for 10 years, and he had shattered it in one night. I called my brother Andrew again, and this time, I let him come over. He brought takeout, sat across from me on the couch, and just listened as I poured everything out, the betrayal, the shame, the confusion. At one point, I whispered, "Do you think this is my fault?" Andrew leaned forward, his eyes burning with protective anger. "Claire, listen to me carefully. It is not your fault. Marcus made a choice. Hannah made a choice. Two adults who knew exactly what they were doing. Do not carry their guilt as your burden." His words were like oxygen, pulling me back from the edge of self-doubt. The next step was telling my mother. That was another storm. She was from an older generation, where divorce was a shameful word whispered behind closed doors. When I told her what happened, she gasped and covered her mouth, shaking her head. "Claire, marriages go through hard times," she said, her voice trembling. "Are you sure you can't forgive him? 10 years is a long time to throw away." Her words cut deeply, not because she was right, but because they echoed the doubts I had buried inside me. Could I forgive him? Was I being impulsive? But then I pictured Hannah's face again, her smug smile, her words dripping like poison. If you can't keep your husband happy, don't blame me. And all doubt vanished. I began the process. I contacted a lawyer, Daniel, a calm and pragmatic man who had handled Andrew's divorce years before. Sitting in his office, surrounded by shelves of legal books, I felt the reality settle over me like a heavy cloak. Divorce wasn't just an emotional decision. It was paperwork, finances, property, dividing a life built together. Daniel explained everything clearly, and though my hands shook as I signed the initial forms, there was also a strange sense of relief. Like I was finally taking control. Meanwhile, Hannah didn't disappear. She sent long emails, each one more manipulative than the last. One read, "Claire, I know you're angry, but please try to see it from my side. Marcus was lonely. He needed someone. I only wanted to protect him from falling apart." Another one had the audacity to say, "You and Marcus were already drifting apart. I just became the person he could lean on. Don't make me the villain in this story." I didn't reply, but her words haunted me late at night, circling in my head when I lay awake staring at the ceiling. She wanted me to believe I was to blame, that I had failed somehow. But deep down, I knew the truth. Friends don't cross that line. Friends don't betray. Marcus, for his part, tried to act like nothing had changed. One evening, he made dinner, setting the table with candles like he used to when we were first dating. "I know you're angry," he said softly, "but can we just sit and eat together? Please." I sat across from him, the food untouched. His eyes searched mine, desperate for even the smallest crack in my resolve. But the more I looked at him, the more I realized he wasn't the man I married. Or maybe he was, and I just hadn't wanted to see it. The final straw came when I discovered he had still been texting Hannah, despite his promises. I wasn't snooping. I had no desire to dig into his phone. But one night, his screen lit up on the counter, and there it was. "I miss you too." My blood ran cold. That was it. No more pity. No more second chances. The next morning, I told him to leave. I packed his things into suitcases, dragged them to the front door, and when he tried to stop me, I shouted so loudly the neighbors probably heard, "Get out of my house." He stood there, stunned, tears in his eyes, but I didn't waver. This was no longer about saving him. It was about saving myself. As the door closed behind him, I sank to the floor, sobbing uncontrollably. It wasn't victory. It wasn't relief. It was grief. The grief of losing the life I thought I had, the marriage I thought was forever, the friend I thought was family. But beneath the grief, there was a flicker of strength. I had taken the first step, and for the first time in weeks, I whispered to myself, "I will survive this." The day Marcus left, the house felt like a tomb. His absence was everywhere, his shoes missing from the hallway, his jackets no longer hanging on the rack, the faint smell of his cologne fading from the bedroom. For years, our lives had been woven together so tightly that cutting him out felt like amputating a part of myself. I walked through the rooms in silence, touching objects that now seemed to belong to another world. The photo albums, the coffee mugs we bought on vacations, the couch where we had spent countless nights watching movies. Everything was the same, and yet nothing was the same. The first week alone was brutal. I woke up in the middle of the night, expecting to hear him breathing beside me. My body still moved through the house as if he were there, setting 2 plates at the table, reaching for his towel in the bathroom, pausing before calling his name. It was like my mind hadn't caught up to the reality that he was gone. And then, when I remembered, the grief hit like a tidal wave all over again. Work became my only refuge. I buried myself in deadlines and projects, hoping that exhaustion would numb the pain. But people notice. My colleagues whispered in hallways, their voices lowering when I walked by. They knew something was wrong. How could they not? My once bright energy was gone, replaced by a hollow version of myself. When Jenna invited me for drinks one evening, I almost said no, but she insisted. Sitting at the bar, with soft music in the background, she finally asked outright, "Claire, what's happening with you? You're fading." I wanted to hold it in, but the truth spilled out like water breaking through a dam. The betrayal, the lies, the humiliation. By the time I finished, Jenna's eyes were wide with shock. She reached across the table, squeezing my hand. Claire, I don't know how you're still standing, but I swear to you, you'll come out stronger. People like them, they don't win in the end. Her words were a small balm, and for the first time, I felt less alone. But Hannah wasn't done with me. One afternoon, I came home to find a letter slipped under my door. It was her handwriting, elegant, deliberate, the same loops and curls I had admired when we passed notes in college. My hands shook as I unfolded it. Claire, I know you're hurting, but I need you to hear me. Marcus and what happened was never meant to destroy you. He needed someone and I was there. I was wrong, yes, but you can't throw away a friendship that has lasted 15 years. Don't punish me forever for one mistake. One mistake. She had reduced the destruction of my marriage, the theft of my trust, to one mistake. I ripped the letter in half and threw it into the trash. But even ripped, it lingered in my mind, her voice echoing inside me, twisting, trying to make me question myself again. Loneliness has a way of magnifying everything. Nights were the worst. I would sit by the window, staring at the empty street, wondering if Marcus was with her, wondering if they were laughing at me. My mind created images I didn't want to see, and yet I couldn't stop them. Sleep rarely came, and when it did, it was haunted by nightmares of betrayal. My mother's disapproval didn't help either. She called often, her tone sharp. Claire, you can still forgive him. You don't have to ruin your life over this. People work through worse things. Each word chipped away at me, filling me with doubt. Was I ruining my life? Had I acted too fast? But every time I asked myself those questions, I came back to the same truth. I couldn't live with a man who had broken my trust, nor with a friend who had betrayed me so deeply. The only person who gave me steady strength was Andrew. He came over regularly, sometimes bringing groceries, sometimes just sitting with me in silence. One evening, as we ate takeout on the floor, he said, Claire, don't let them live rent-free in your head. You've already taken back your life by kicking him out. Now it's time to rebuild. His words stayed with me, like a lantern in the darkness. Slowly, I began taking small steps forward. I joined a yoga class to calm my restless mind. I started running in the mornings, pounding the pavement until my legs ached, as if I could sweat out the pain. I even began journaling, pouring my tangled thoughts onto paper to untangle them. These were fragile beginnings, but they gave me moments of clarity, moments where I could glimpse a version of myself who wasn't defined by betrayal, but Hannah's shadow was never far. One Saturday, as I walked into the grocery store, I saw her standing in the produce aisle. For a moment, I froze, every muscle in my body tensing. She looked at me with that same maddening expression, half guilt, half superiority. She walked over, her voice low so others wouldn't hear. Claire, you're making this harder than it has to be. Marcus still loves you. Stop punishing him, and me. We all made mistakes. I stared at her, my heart racing, and for the first time, I didn't crumble. I didn't shout. I didn't cry. I simply said, you and Marcus deserve each other. But you will never have me in your life again. Then I turned and walked away, leaving her standing there among the apples and oranges, her mouth half open in disbelief. That night, for the first time since the betrayal, I slept without nightmares. It wasn't peace, not yet. But it was a beginning. A small victory. A reminder that I was stronger than both of them thought. Life after betrayal is a strange mix of silence and noise. Silence in the moments when the house feels too empty, when you sit at the dinner table alone, staring at a single plate. Noise in the chaos of your thoughts, in the whispers of neighbors who heard rumors, in the endless ringing of a phone you don't want to answer. That was my life in the weeks that followed. Each day felt like a battle between the part of me that wanted to curl up and disappear, and the part of me that stubbornly kept pushing forward, that I started rebuilding slowly. My runs became longer, my journal thicker. I forced myself to reach out to friends I had neglected during my marriage, people I once thought I didn't have time for. Jenna became a constant in my life, checking in, inviting me out, reminding me that I was more than a woman defined by heartbreak. One Friday evening, She dragged me to a small art exhibit downtown. At first, I wanted to leave, the couples holding hands, making me feel like a stranger in my own skin. But then, as I stood in front of a painting of a storm breaking into sunlight, I felt something shift. It was small, fragile, but it was hope. Maybe I could find light again, but just as I began to stand taller, Marcus found a new way to drag me back into the storm. It started with text messages, short, desperate lines at odd hours. I miss you. We can fix this. Please talk to me. I ignored them at first, but then they became longer, more emotional. One night, at 2 in the morning, I woke to a message that read, "Claire, I don't know how to live without you. I'm lost." Part of me wanted to delete it, to harden myself against his words. But another part, the part that still remembered our wedding day, the vacations, the quiet mornings with coffee, felt a pang of guilt. He had hurt me, yes, but he was also the man I had once loved with every piece of my soul. That history doesn't just vanish. And then came the flowers. A bouquet left at my doorstep with a note. To my wife, the only woman I'll ever love. Forgive me. I stared at them for a long time, torn between wanting to throw them in the trash and wanting to cling to them as proof that maybe, just maybe, he still cared. In the end, I left them outside, letting the wind scatter the petals across the porch. Andrew was furious when I told him, "Claire, don't let him back in. He made his choice, and now he wants to crawl back because he's lonely. Don't let his loneliness become your burden." His voice was harsh, but it came from love. I knew he was right. And yet, at night, Marcus's words echoed in my head, blurring the line between anger and longing. The real breaking point came one Saturday afternoon when Marcus showed up at my door. He looked thinner, his face drawn, his clothes wrinkled like he hadn't cared for himself in weeks. "Claire," he said softly, "please, just give me 5 minutes." I should have slammed the door. I should have told him to leave. But instead, I found myself stepping aside, letting him in. We sat at the kitchen table, the same table where we had once shared countless dinners, the same table where I had first told him I wanted a divorce. He reached for my hand, but I pulled back, the memory of his betrayal flashing like fire in my mind. He sighed, lowering his gaze. "I ended it with Hannah. I swear it's over. I haven't seen her in weeks. She meant nothing, Claire. Nothing compared to you." I wanted to laugh, but the tears burned too close to the surface. "She meant enough for you to throw away 10 years of marriage," I whispered. His face crumpled, and he buried his face in his hands. I was weak. I was selfish. I don't even know why I did it. But please, don't give up on us. Hearing him beg broke something in me. Not in the way he hoped, but in a way that made me realize how far gone we really were. I had spent weeks living with pain, anger, shame. And here he was, trying to hand me his guilt like it was a gift. I stood slowly, my voice trembling but firm. "Marcus, I can't be your savior. I can't be the woman you broke and then expect to fix everything again. I deserve better than this." His eyes filled with tears, and for the first time, I didn't feel pity. I felt strength. I showed him to the door, and as he lingered on the porch, looking like a man who had lost everything, I realized that's exactly what he was. And it wasn't my job to put his pieces back together. But Hannah wasn't silent either. She posted pictures on social media, smiling selfies, captions about new beginnings and finding love where you least expect it. People whispered. Some unfollowed her, siding with me. Others, I could tell, were drawn into her charm, her ability to twist the story into something that made her the victim. Seeing her face pop up on my feed made my stomach turn, until one day, I finally blocked her. That night, I sat on my bed, my phone silent, and I realized something important. I wasn't fighting to get Marcus back anymore. I wasn't fighting to punish Hannah. I was fighting to reclaim myself. For the first time in months, I felt the faintest glimmer of freedom. By the time a few months had passed, I had finally begun to feel like a different woman. The deep wounds were still there, but they had started to scar over. I had established a rhythm. Work during the day, yoga or running in the evenings, journaling at night. I even signed up for a weekend pottery class, something I had always wanted to try, but never made time for. Each small step felt like reclaiming a part of myself that I had lost long before the betrayal. I noticed the change most when I looked in the mirror. The dark circles under my eyes had softened. My smile, rare but real, no longer felt like a stranger on my face. Friends told me I seemed lighter, and Andrew, always blunt, said, "Claire, you're finally starting to look like you again." Those words gave me strength. But peace never comes without interruption. One Thursday evening, after a long day at work, I came home to find an envelope taped to my front door. My stomach sank when I saw the handwriting, Marcus's, messy and hurried. I carried it inside with trembling hands, hesitating before opening it. Inside was a letter, pages long. His words spilled across them, desperate and pleading. "I know I destroyed everything. I know I don't deserve forgiveness. But I can't move on. Claire, you're the love of my life. Hannah meant nothing. Please, I'm begging you to give us another chance." I folded the letter carefully and set it aside. I didn't cry this time. Instead, I sat quietly, letting the weight of his words wash over me. They no longer held the power they once did. His pain wasn't mine to carry anymore, but what cut deeper was what came the next week. I was scrolling through social media when I froze. There, staring back at me, was a photo of Marcus and Hannah together at a dinner party. She was leaning against him, her hand on his chest, both of them smiling like they had never broken anything in their lives. The caption read, "Sometimes love finds a way." The world tilted beneath me. Anger, sharp and hot, rose in my chest. He had written me a letter begging for forgiveness, swearing she meant nothing. Yet here they were, parading their relationship like a trophy. I slammed my phone down on the counter, my whole body shaking. The betrayal felt fresh all over again. Not just because of what they were doing, but because of how brazen they were about it. They wanted me to see. Hannah, especially, her captions, her carefully staged photos, were weapons meant to cut me down. She wanted me to believe she had won. For days, I battled the temptation to confront them, to call Marcus and scream, to message Hannah and unleash the fury boiling inside me. But every time I picked up the phone, Andrew's voice echoed in my head, "Don't let them live rent-free in your head." They had already taken enough from me. I wasn't about to give them more. Still, the pain lingered. At work, I had to fight to keep my focus, my hands trembling during presentations. At night, I lay awake replaying those images, wondering how two people who had hurt me so deeply could look so carefree. The unfairness of it gnawed at me. I was the one left shattered, while they walked around smiling like their actions had no consequences. But then something happened that shifted everything. I received a call from Daniel, my lawyer. He told me the divorce papers had been finalized. "It's official, Claire," he said gently. "You're free."
Free.
The word wrapped around me like a blanket. Tears slipped down my cheeks, but this time, they weren't just tears of grief. They were tears of release. For the first time since that awful night in Hannah's apartment, I felt a sense of closure. Marcus and Hannah could flaunt their so-called love all they wanted. It no longer had power over me. That evening, I poured myself a glass of wine and sat on the porch, watching the sun dip below the horizon. The air was cool, the sky streaked with orange and pink. I whispered to myself, "This is the first day of the rest of my life." And for once, I believed it. The day the divorce became final marked the end of one chapter of my life, but it was also the beginning of another I never imagined I'd write. For so long, my identity had been tied to being Marcus's wife and Hannah's best friend. Losing them felt like losing myself. But standing on the other side of that storm, I realized I hadn't lost myself. I had been forced to rediscover who I was without them. The weeks after the final papers came through were quieter. My house, once filled with tension, felt lighter. I rearranged the furniture, painted the walls a softer color, and replaced old photos with new artwork that reflected who I was becoming. It was symbolic in a way, turning the space into something that belonged only to me. No ghosts of broken vows, no reminders of betrayals. Just me. There were still moments of weakness. Nights when loneliness whispered in my ear, reminding me of what I no longer had. Times when I'd see a happy couple on the street and feel a pang of envy. But those moments no longer crushed me. Instead, they reminded me of what I deserved. I deserved love that was loyal, friendship that was true, a life that wasn't built on lies. Hannah and Marcus continued their charade for a while. I'd hear whispers from mutual acquaintances, see the occasional post online. But over time, their smiles began to look forced, their captions more hollow. Eventually, I stopped checking altogether. Their story was no longer mine to follow. Their choices no longer defined me. What defined me was resilience, the ability to stand after being knocked down, to find light after being drowned in darkness. I started saying yes to new things, joining a hiking group, taking weekend trips by myself, even trying dating again. I was cautious, of course, but each step forward was proof that I could build a life without fear. Looking back now, I realized something important. Betrayal doesn't break you. It shatters the illusions you once clung to, and in the wreckage, you're given the chance to rebuild with stronger foundations. Marcus and Hannah thought they had taken everything from me, but what they really did was set me free. Anyone listening to my story, if you've been betrayed, if your world has been turned upside down by the people you trusted most, hear me when I say this. You will survive. You will hurt. You will cry. You will question your worth. But you are stronger than you think. And one day, you will wake up and realize that the people who broke you no longer have the power to define you. And so, this is my story. A story of loss, of pain, but also of survival and renewal. Thank you for staying with me until the end, for listening to my journey. If my words resonated with you, if they gave you even a little strength, I ask you to support me. Leave a like, share the story, and subscribe to the channel. Because sometimes, the greatest healing comes from knowing you're not alone. And together, we can rise above even the deepest betrayals.